All right, my longtime friend David Chang is here. Um, we talk about food movies all the time. You've talked about them on your podcast. This movie, Chef, which came out in 2014, directed by Jon Favreau, starring Jon Favreau. There's lots of awkward connections for you. Like, you know, some of the people in this. You're claiming you have to be careful. I know you're not going to be careful. But one of the reasons that this to me defines a rewatchable movie because over the last 9 years, it's been on and I keep getting sucked in. As soon as they're in the food truck, I'm ready to go. I love Leguizamo in this movie. I think this is the most I've ever liked Leguizamo in anything. And just in general, I like the hang and I like seeing the food. And I think this might be my favorite food movie, Chang.
If I had to guess which food movie would be your favorite food movie, it would be this movie.
Is that a backhanded compliment?
No, because number one, it's on all the time, right? And I think a lot of that is because Netflix has the Chef Show, which is like a spinoff of this show.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie, and all the sort of themes in it are relatable, and the food is approachable. It's not about 3 Michelin-star dining, none of that stuff. So it's all very, very much populist and approachable, but also done well.
Right now, it's on HBO Max, which is where I saw it on one of the HBO channels. And I don't think my wife had ever seen it. And we were watching it. And the little kid's really good in it. And I could feel her getting sucked in. This catches food at probably the most interesting year you ever could have made this movie, right? 2014. We're still in the first part of the 2010s. The food critic is still incredibly important, right? Are you doing Lucky Peach at this time?
Yeah. And it's on his desk a couple times, and I forgot about that. This is peak food moment in American history, like right in 2013, 2014, because you're out of the early aughts, and now you're in the teens, and social media now is just everyone knows about it. Before, no one knew anything about it, at least in the culinary community.
So now you have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pushing people toward restaurants and chefs.
People are following Eater, they're following Food News, they're following chefs. So this was all new. This was all on the ascendancy of like, it's never going to be higher than it was back then.
And we have shows like Top Chef, things like that. You have Hell's Kitchen. The concept of a celebrity chef, when does that start? When did you become a celebrity chef? Late 2000s?
I guess I started to become well known like 2005, 2006.
In Washington, in New York.
Yeah. And, there'd always been celebrity chefs.
Right.
But they were mostly known as like TV chefs, right? But the distinction between being famous for cooking and being famous for TV had never really been, talked about. So that's why a lot of chefs that don't want to be known as just like a fake celebrity chef hate the term celebrity chef. It's not like a compliment at all.
Right. You sound like a hack almost. Yeah, because I remember in 2014, we were in the finals. It was San Antonio, Miami. I was on Countdown, and we did a whole Grantland shoot of Franco Barbecue. And we went, it was like House Seats 4, House Seats 5, one of those. We brought Jalen, and we had Rembert and me and Jacoby and a whole bunch of people. And one of the reasons we went there was because we knew what Franco Barbecue was. We had heard about the legend at that point. I would have had no idea in 2005 of any of that stuff, right? And he's in this movie.
That's one of the best parts of the whole movie, too. For me, it captures like not peak Franklin Barbecue, but again, this moment in time that I lived through that I'm not saying food is like not as popular as it was, but it's not as novel. It's not as new, right? Like you knew about this place in Austin, Texas.
I knew about your place.
Exactly.
I knew about Momofuku and all that stuff.
It was part of the zeitgeist.
When did you open the second DC restaurant?
Like around that same time.
Yeah, and the house was like, you got to come back. We got to go to this fucking restaurant. You got to ask Chen to ask Chang. And it just felt like everything was taken off. I do think Eater was a big part of this too. Because there was and Lucky Peach was a big part of it. There's still food critics. Like Jonathan Gold is still crushing it at this point. There was still a dialogue about food. There was real criticism. That's why the critic guy is so interesting in this movie. He's obviously modeled after Jonathan Gold. We're going to talk about some of your issues and ups and downs with critics over the years, but all of it feels like something. And now I don't really know where we are because TikTok comes in. We've had a lot of celebrity chefs like that have come and gone, and there's been some cancellations. There's been all kinds of things. There's been restaurants. Vegas kind of took over, and it just became an industry.
And the word celebrity chef is now fitting. It was just too far ahead. Now celebrities are chefs.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You had chefs.
Selena Gomez
becoming content
yeah.
people. Oh, yeah. And then we have that too. And Marshawn Lynch.
Yes.
Whoever you want to name. But the concept of a food critic mattering this much, to me, made way more sense in 2014 than it does in 2023, which is one of the fun things about this movie.
It still matters, but not as much. Not as much. Not nearly as much. But that was like the most power they wielded was in that period too, for sure.
In like internet first 4 or 5 years of 2010s, pre-Twitter, I don't care about somebody's feelings.
Yes.
Right.
The transition hadn't been like quite complete. People were still looking at the 3-4 newspapers, magazines as the gatekeepers about where's delicious. And, food literacy wasn't as high as it is today, just 10 years later. So you still needed to go ask the experts what good was.
Yeah.
And now in 2023, you don't need that. You can go on TikTok. You're going to know yourself. Your kid probably will know better than anyone else too. So it's a very different landscape.
I think that's been the same for movies and TV too, to some degree. I think that dialogue has drifted toward podcasts. And where in the old days, you think like in the old days, like movie critics like Pauline Kael or Roger Ebert, who we always mention, they had real sway and power. Now I don't feel like critics, they can add to the dialogue, but they don't set the conversation. Like in this movie, the guy Ramsey, I think his name was
Ramsey Michelle.
Yeah. He literally destroys this guy's career with a review. And he trends on Twitter and there's no going back, and Favreau's character snaps. That was a realistic 2014 scenario. I don't know if it's realistic in 2023.
I mean, it would still happen, but it wouldn't like capture the attention, right? And I've been on the receiving end of that kind of review. In fact, I got a bad review from Oliver Platt, who plays Ramsey Michelle's brother, was the food critic for New York Magazine, Adam Platt. And like I bumped into him the day he gave me a bad review, and I let him have it. But unfortunately, there were no other. I wasn't being recorded. Yeah.
Well, the most interesting that happened to you is the Jonathan Gold piece, which, the guy in this movie, Jonathan Gold, is basically the real life version of that guy.
Right.
Plus, I think carried more weight. He won more awards. He was considered the greatest food critic ever.
And based in L.A.
Based in LA.
Food critic. Yeah.
So you opened Momofuku, which we talked about on your podcast, and he wrote a kind of pissy review about it, which was not super negative, but it also wasn't complimentary. It was very carefully crafted, and you guys had a lot of history at that point.
Yeah, it was personal, and it wasn't a review that any other normal food critic would do, because he says it outright. I'm mad at this guy because we had closed Lucky Peach down.
Right, and he was still
pissed.
furious about the Lucky Peach.
So it also tells you just how different the criticism is. It's become way more subjective, right?
Yeah.
And, people love the negative reviews. All critics are remembered for their takedowns, never for their positive write-ups. So, I don't think that was necessarily a takedown. I think when people read that, they were like, whoa, what's going on with these two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like there was...
And we couldn't really talk about it. That made it really like... I couldn't like make a reply in the editorial section of the LA Times. I thought about it.
Well, because I'm half Italian and you're Korean, and our instinct is to just...
I know. And
something
then,
like that. We could push our buttons.
Unfortunately, he passed, so I never got the chance to
Right. So when you see the Favreau character in this movie, what resonate? We can do the opposite of this question, but what resonates with you the most? Because to me, one of the things this movie just nails, and I think they really cared about, and then in some of the research, he leaned on Roy Choi for a lot of...
Both close friends of mine. Roy, super close.
Well, he leans on him about the chef thing, and Roy's basically like, if you're going to do this, I have to put you through this crash course. The chef thing is about precision. It's about repetition. It's about being just over and over again doing the same thing and really caring about burying yourself in the little details, which is something you've always told me too.
Yes.
And Favreau, like in the first scene, he's making stuff and you can see it. Like he's doing all the stuff. There's no stunt work. But what else resonated with you?
Well, I want people to know Favreau really learned how to cook.
Yeah.
And just as a quick side note, I did a dinner at Wolfgang Puck's restaurant in Bel Air, and it was like one of those like celebrity dinner things. And Roy Choi was also cooking the dinner, so it was like the three of us. You know who was like the commis, like the apprentice, was John.
Yeah.
And Favreau was like really cooking and getting totally shit on. Wolfgang Puck was just merciless on him. Like, what is that? What are you doing? What are you that? And now Favreau's a really good cook. So he really wanted to learn. So the food is not just believable in the movie. It's just like, because that's what Roy was doing. And before Roy did food trucks, he was like working in real restaurants. So
the food truck scene. Oh, wait, the resonating thing. What else resonated you with the character?
I didn't understand when I watched it in 2014, a father-son relationship. And I think this movie can be interpreted a lot of different ways. It's like Favreau's sort of relationship as a director in Hollywood. I think it's an allegory for a lot of that. And also like him being a dad in a lot of ways. And when I first watched that, I was like, I have no idea. This is like ridiculous. I don't care about any of that stuff. But
now you have two sons.
Now I have two sons. I was like, oh yeah, anything that's father related. I'm like, oh yeah, that resonates a lot more. But because it was culinary focused and all these things, it resonates. Yeah.
The food truck piece of it. So the food trucks are really, this is like a wave.
This is peak food truck.
Peak food truck. Food truck's still a thing, but not there. Now it's like easier to discover them. There's maps for them. There's apps for them. People know where they are. They're usually a gateway to getting your own restaurant or something like that. Like what's changed in the last 9 years?
Well, a lot of the story in Chef takes from Roy Choi's story, right? He merges Korean food with Mexican food and puts it on a food truck because he was sort of disillusioned himself, and he does it. And like he uses Twitter for the first time. No one had used Twitter to like advertise. It was like so far ahead of its time. And like it taps into the like young zeitgeist, and that's how like everyone's talking about it. Even in New York, people are like, have you heard about this taco truck? Everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? Taco truck. So that's like, that storyline was real. And
do you remember hearing about the taco truck and being like, I got to check this out?
1,000%, because Roy won Bon Appetit Chef of the Year after I won it.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, what the hell is happening? It was so important as to what was happening food-wise, because people didn't know. They only talked about stuff that happened at fancy French restaurants at the time.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about a food truck. So it was just a complete 180 in terms of how people would think about food, write about food, eat food. And the fact that happened, and in 2013, 14, right around that time, it was peak food truck because of the success of Roy. Everyone wanted a food truck. And because of that, it's not as special. So I don't think you're going to see it like that again, in my opinion.
I remember in LA, it was an amazing time because all of a sudden there were these little pockets that would pop up. Like Wilshire would have one, like kind of past Fairfax going toward La Cienega, but there was like this whole stretch of food trucks in this one area, and they were like really, really high end. So I was like, what's this? Is this like where things are going? Now it feels a little more planned out. And also like people are way better at making food now. I think there's probably more good people cooking than we've probably ever had, because this whole generation influenced this whole next generation, right?
And a lot of the people that have food trucks wound up in a restaurant. That's sort of like the goal. I mean, Roy still has his Kogi fleet, but I mean, a lot of my friends that started food trucks, their goal was this is their lowest cost way for them to get an audience and then open up like an actual brick and mortar restaurant.
There's also a Bourdain piece that we have to mention too. If you're talking about like how this is kind of peak food conversation, a moment, we have him too. I know you were close to him, but
yeah. And I remember Favreau, that was something that he really sort of dove into too, is like getting the Bourdain element right, because he was like, the narrator of an entire culinary generation.
Because there's a couple moments in this movie that feel a little Bourdain-y, right? When they're going from location to location. And it becomes a completely different movie where we go to Miami and New Orleans and Austin. It's one of the reasons I love this movie, because all of a sudden it's basically a reality show. and we're just kind of hanging out with these three characters that I've grown to like, and I'm going to different cities and seeing food and seeing things cooked.
It's like 3 different movies
Yeah.
in one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the traveling bit is definitely an ode to Bourdain, I think, right? Bourdain always wanted to use food as a way to absorb culture, right? That was the vehicle. So like the Austin scene, for example, is a good example where you have Gary Clark Jr. and it's not even just about the food, it's about the music, but it's the entry point to everything. Yeah.
We have a category in the Rewatchables that I'm just going to do now that is called sequel, prequel, prestige TV, all black cast, or untouchable. I just think this is, if they made this movie now, it's not a movie, it's an 8-episode series.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question. And I actually like that it's a movie. I think this is a good example of why not everything needs to be an 8 or 10 episode series. They could easily, like, episode 6 could have been Miami. Episode 7 could have been driving to New Orleans and they run out of gas and they have to stay at a crappy hotel and they all have to share a bed. And then episode 8, now they're in, Austin. But I like that it's contained under 2 hours. If anything, this movie probably feels like 5 minutes too long.
It's a good 2-hour film, and it's something where you're always glad that you sort of watched a little bit of it because you know exactly what's happening. So, it's interesting. I never thought of it as a series. I've always, because it's a movie, I think it's like, what would a prequel look like? A young Favreau, skinny, that's like, I want to know, as a chef in me wants to know what the fuck happened in Miami, right? The origin of Carl Casper, the character. What did he do to capture a national attention, right? Because Miami's now like a super hotspot, right?
Yeah.
But to be noticed in Miami on a national level
in the early 2000s.
Yeah, you got to do something like.
And to land Sofia Vergara.
That's a whole other conversation.
You have to be like an absolutely elite chef in the Miami scene.
Yes.
Well, because the Miami restaurants, what was it? It was
you have Michelle Bernstein. You have
Joe's
is like an institution,
and then Prime, whatever. Prime.
But now you have the Carbone guys are taking it over. But back then, nobody. You had people of note on a national level. Probably Michelle Bernstein was the most famous. But to be a young up and coming chef where people around the country would eat at and talk about, that's where I will talk about later. There's a bit of a discrepancy. Yeah.
Okay. He wrote the script after directing several big budget films, including one that we just did last week on the Rewatchables, Iron Man, which he did in 2008. And he wanted to do a thing about cooking. He wanted to be small scale, independent. He cited movies like Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and Big Night as inspirations, make it food centric, semi-autographical, as you mentioned. Being a father and being busy, coming from a broken home. And also, like, there's a little bit of the parallels that you mentioned with his life.
Yeah.
See, I think he did Cowboys and Aliens in 2011, and it probably made its money back, but it didn't do that great.
I don't mind that movie too much. It's not terrible.
But he took some shit for that, and then it's like, oh my God, I've become big budget guy. How did this happen? I started out as the swingers guy.
And then Iron Man, and then Iron Man 2 he didn't direct, and he didn't direct Iron Man 3, but he was a producer. And I think, again, I never asked John, but, I think, what was that? Who was it was Parcells that said, like, I want to shop for my groceries too. Like, It's a very similar mentality, I think, for a director that would want some control over the production of the film, and the same thing as like and again, like, I think that's one of the reasons that translates to the movie, where I understand. When I first watched it, I thought, maybe I don't quite understand why a chef like that doesn't own the restaurant. But I think John was trying to tell a narrative that, fit his narrative.
He's officially become underrated, I think.
I love him. All his stuff is great.
And I'm not just saying that because you're friends with him, but, for a lot of us, especially people in our generation, he was the swingers guy. Right? He made Swingers a huge success. It was a really influential guys movie we've done on the Rewatchables. It really mattered to a certain generation. And then watching him kind of evolve from that, and it was like, oh, this guy's having a career. That's cool. But then Elf happens, and he becomes a real director.
It's like the best Christmas movie of all time.
Still and that's grown in stature. Then he gets Iron Man, and that basically, creates the Marvel universe. And he's the one who wanted to cast Downey. And then he has this, and then he has Mandalorian. That's a pretty nice, every decade having something that kind of mattered. And Chef probably doesn't matter culturally like the other things, but it's still a cool movie that they don't really make movies like that anymore. I don't know anybody who's like, I fucking hate Chef. That movie sucks. He took shit in 2014 for it, I think, a little bit because
it deviated from what he had been normally doing too.
Yeah, and also like, why are you the one doing a Chef movie? Who are you?
But again, like we do need more movies like that, but it wouldn't have been made if it wasn't John doing it.
Yeah.
Right? I remember asking him, this is sort of paraphrased over the years, but like, how did he do it from being in Rudy, right? All the way to where it is today.
You're the man now!
And he was like on the set of Rudy, he was asking every question. Like he was just a nuisance on set because he was trying to absorb, and everything he's ever done sort of rolled into the next thing. And
Swingers, same way with Doug Liman, where they were like soaking in all, because they made that movie for like $5.
And I saw it with my own eyes at how he wanted to absorb the culinary world. And like, it's a real thing. So I think his success is really tied to just how curious he is and wanting to learn all the time. So
yeah. Well, he shadowed Roy Choi. He worked in his kitchen crew. Roy oversaw the menus and created the Cuban sandwiches, which we're definitely going to talk about. Taught him to hone his knife skills. Taught him to just be authentic with every piece of it, even folding towels, all the repetitive tasks. And that was that. This movie had an $11 million budget. $46 million it made. Plus, it feels like it's been on for the last 7 years.
So it's probably made the same amount of money. That sense, right?
It's probably done pretty well. Our guy Roger Ebert did not review it because I think he wasn't around anymore at that point.
Do they still do thumbs up on Roger Ebert?
I think Roger Ebert would have been 3.5 stars for Raj. It had story, it had heart. I think he would have enjoyed that. So here's how I know we're doing a good rewatchable. I probably have too many rewatchable scenes, so we can rip through them. I like the opening credits we mentioned where he's just doing the prep work and he goes to the farmer's market. Just because it's like, we're in it. All right, this guy's a real chef. I believe it. The Dustin Hoffman versus Favreau. I need your perspective on all of this. He says stuff like, I've had chefs before you in this kitchen. I'll have chefs after you. Our place is in a creative rut. That's what Favreau says. Hoffman says, when you put that artsy shit on the menu, people don't like it. He brags about how he bought him the French cooking suite he wanted. And then he says, you know what I think? I think you should play your hits. Your thoughts, David Chang.
I love Reva.
The Hoffman character.
Yeah, because it was the most accurate. By far and away, the most accurate person in the movie. I have found myself saying that to younger chefs that work for me. It's like, get rid of that artsy shit. Like,
yeah, play the hits.
What are you doing? You know what I mean? You're not good enough yet to do something like this.
Right.
Stop trying to impress people. Stop trying to be cool. But even that stuff, like, I've got you this fancy stove, all these things. And I know restaurateurs that are like him. So, he was very good, very convincing for me, for sure.
What was the most artsy-fartsy thing you cooked where you had a heat check? You had a Jordan Poole 28-footer on a menu one night.
I made a tofu foam thing on sea urchin and tapioca pearls.
What restaurant was that?
That's Samba early day. It was really good, but man, like I had my head up my own ass on that one for sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That sounds like the Jordan Poole 28-footer. Next one for rewatchable scenes. Chef reading the scathing review, which he thinks is going to be a good review. He reads it to the staff. And it has lines like, his needy and also irrelevant chocolate lava cake. His dramatic weight gain must be because he's eating all the food people send back to the kitchen.
That's my favorite line.
Just brutal. He's like 40 daggers. It's actually a well-written review. I would like to read the whole thing online if it exists, but you must have had a moment like that where you're like, oh, the review's out. And it's like, oh.
The reviews are less powerful today than... It's hard to describe for people that are not old enough, but when I first started cooking at like a serious restaurant in 2000, there was no online reviews at the time, right? So they would send me up. I remember in New York Times, it would come out the Tuesday night at like 10 p.m. So they were like, here's some money, go to New York Times office, and they're going to put that out first. And I got that copy, I brought it down. It was a 3-star review for Tom Colicchio's Craft. It was glorious. It was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. When you get a great review, it's like winning a championship. Yeah. It really is. Getting a bad review, I've only really had one terrible review, and a lot of people piled in on that. That was Nishi. It is like the worst feeling in the world, especially when you're in that moment where you're like, everybody's like anticipating this thing, and you think you're doing a good job, and everybody nobody's pessimistic, right? And then it comes out, it's like somebody died. Yeah, it's really it's terrible. Yeah.
Nishi, what went wrong with that restaurant? I forget.
I think
Or was it just backlash because you had too
a little
many
bit of that
success?
too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the dishes that we did are now very commonplace in New York City.
Nishi, now underrated.
I think it was totally underrated. I also say this: I could have executed things better, and maybe it was too loud, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a great restaurant, and I think there was a little bit of backlash. That's just my opinion. But ultimately, we could have done better for sure.
So you read the review and you immediately just want to kill somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it was more like, I can't believe this. I've never had a review like that. Everything had always been unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Just super amazing reviews. And that one was a 1 star. It's like, I'm used to getting like 3 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars, right?
1 star feels aggressive. 1 star is like Jack in the Box.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like a good thing, right? You can get
Is Jack in the Box
satisfactory.
sponsoring us, Craig? Can I? No? Okay.
Yeah, we're
I'm gonna let's keep that in.
So I remember getting that and just being gutted. And I could really relate to that moment in the film, for sure.
Well, the good news for you is you don't internalize stuff and dwell on it for a long period of time. The next one. Oh, I'll do this now. I had a critic question because this isn't burnt too. When the critic is coming, it really operates like this, where it's like, Bob's coming today. We got to have good. What's our menu? Good. Like, is this how accurate is this compared to real life?
So again, like things like the TV show The Bear, as like it's the most accurate thing on TV and film, right? But even that is still following certain things that would never happen in a restaurant because it has to follow like a 37-minute arc or something like that. There is no way that would happen in real life. It would happen in Europe. In Australia and the UK, the critic announces themselves beforehand. I don't know why, but they do that.
Yeah.
In America, it's all about being anonymous. So that there is just no way you could explain that to an audience that has no idea about food and understanding criticism.
So, like with Momofuku, did you know Jonathan Gold was in there?
I mean, it's hard for him to miss
because you knew what he looks like.
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
But
when he's there, you're like, all right, he's there.
Yeah, but you don't know ahead of time.
Just keep going.
They always change their pseudonyms. You have no idea, really.
Next rewatchable scene: Hoffman versus Favreau, Part 2. It's not your food; it's my food.
He's not wrong.
Let's go, Tony. Tony's played by Bobby Carnival. He's just kind of freezes. Let's go, Tony. Have you seen that happen? Or it's like the chef's out. Oh, I thought my number 2 was coming.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe not in that short amount of time, but probably over like a week period, that would happen. Like, yeah, I'm definitely coming with you, chef. And then they never come.
See, that's why I love Fantasy and CR and Mallory and Juliet. They were like my John Leguizamo. They came and we conquered. Now we have the beautiful ringer. Favreau food prepping his revenge meal. And then coming to the restaurant and flipping out on Ramsay. It's fucking molten, asshole! And this is probably the most unrealistic scene in the movie, but I really like it. I don't think anybody would be this deliberately crazy with 50 people there. I don't know.
I think there are chefs that would definitely do it.
Really?
I think I would do it.
You would grab the molten cake and hold it up?
There's so many dishes that critics get wrong.
Yeah.
And you're like, it was executed right. You're just a dumbass.
Yeah.
And that was sort of basically what he was telling Ramsay. It's like the molten center, to get geeky, that is like a Michel Bras invention from one of the great chefs ever. And there's 2 kinds of parallel flourless warm chocolate cakes. One was sort of invented by Jean-Georges von Richten, which doesn't have a center of chocolate ganache. It's just a batter that you cook underbaked. The Michel Bras one is very difficult, and he literally makes like a sphere of chocolate that when you bake it, it melts, and that's the chocolate center, and that's the one that Favreau is making an homage to, and that's what he was saying. Like, you're an idiot. You don't know what this is.
I love that version. The Downey scene. Robert Downey Jr., who's one of the most famous actors in the world at this point, just pops in and fucking hits like 4 threes in 5 seconds, and is just the peak, like arrogant, kind of funny Robert Downey. Talking about how his secretary's pregnant. The good news is I had my tubes tied in 08, so she's clearly a fucking liar. He's just going nuts. Basically confesses that he might have had sex with Sofia Vergara. And it's just fun to see Robert Downey. This cast in this movie, they have Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Dustin Hoffman, John Leguizamo,
Amy
Bobby
Sedaris.
Cannavale, Amy Sedaris.
Yeah.
It's just loaded start to finish.
That was a nice interlude, right? It was like
Yeah.
a nice intermezzo type of thing.
Yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
because then we move into the second half of the movie. This is a small scene, but I really like when he takes his son, as we both have sons, and he buys him the chef's knife, and he explains the concept of this is your knife. You have to take care of it. I just like that part when they go to the farmer's market, they get all the meat for the Cubano. Just that whole section's really fun. The Burt sandwich speech is another great father-son moment.
There's two great father-son moments. One
Yeah.
was when the kid is helping him clean out the food truck and he throws away the hotel pan.
Right, he gets mad, yeah.
I was like, shit, I said that so many different ways to cooks. And I'm sure now that my son's like 4, I've said the same kind of thing. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He's like, but you told me to, it's just communication breakdown a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the burnt one, I've had that. The burnt Cubano, I've had thousands and thousands of times. You just want to teach somebody to care because this is like my profession. I care about it, which is why I'm good at it, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that definitely was real.
I'm good at this. I get to touch people's lives with what I do. I mean, that must have resonated with you.
It's true.
Very few things a person can do for another person. Like you can write something, you can make, I don't know, a TV show, like you can make a show like Succession, you can cook for them, you can play music for them. It's not a long list. It's probably under 10. The South Beach Cubanos and the annoying police officer.
Yes.
Leading into the things are going well montage, which is always one of my favorites in any movie where we get lots of screens up. The police officer's hilarious. I have Franklin's barbecue.
I didn't like the police officer bit.
I thought that was fun. I like when he's like, one more with the bread.
That to me is the go take a pee break.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We disagree. Franklin's barbecue, we did not disagree.
No.
That is just.
I love the respect to the church, to Aaron Franklin, who's now like, there are people that say that it's better, but it's still my favorite. I think it's the best barbecue, some of the very best in the world. And it's
And
delicious.
for the people listening, it really is like that. There's just this giant fucking, he took us in there too when we went, this giant thing in the back. You open it up and there's just these huge things of meat.
It's
and
awesome.
It sells out immediately. It's the best smell you've ever smelled. Your clothes smell after, your hands smell after, your face smells. You're like in a half coma.
Just seeing that on TV made me happy because I love that restaurant so much.
Yeah. Well, he's like, I mean, he's one of the legends now. I really like the 1 second video montage.
It was like TikTok before TikTok. Was that Vine?
I guess it was like a version of Vine. Yeah.
Can I also say, do you think that this was the first movie that integrated social media, how they would show the typing on stuff on the screen? I think it was one of the very first ones.
I had that in there. For better and worse, because some of it doesn't really work because they didn't get the graphics down yet.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's
what did that was House of Cards. The TV show did that too, which is right around then.
Remember? Oh yeah, you're right.
They always had the text bubbles on.
Because I remember watching it for the first time, being like, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the ending when the guy says he'll back him. What a swerve. How realistic is that? You wouldn't have been backed by this guy. You would have told him to go fuck himself and choke on his Cubano.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I probably would have started a competing newspaper site just to put him out of business.
This is why we love each other.
Yeah.
No, I think, because at that point, he's probably like, this food truck's going great. I could get some backers. That could be a picking nits with this movie where it's like, you're doing awesome. Somebody's will have backed you with the Cubanos by now. All right, so what's the most rewatchable scene for you?
There's 3. Not one. I think when he's making pasta for Scarlett Johansson after service.
Yeah.
That he makes aglio e olio, which is one of the easiest dishes anyone could make. It's garlic, olive oil, chili peppers. You can add parsley or not add parsley, the pasta water and spaghetti and salt. You're done. Like, to me, that was real. That's what cooks would make because you don't need anything really.
Yeah.
And it's just always a funny thing to me that he's having sex with Scarlett Johansson.
after making your pasta.
The power of food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
What's the second one?
The second one is, the critic. I love watching the critic getting like yelled at.
Yeah.
Because that's just like, I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know if I would do it direct. Like maybe I would, depending on the situation. And the grilled cheese.
I had that in What's Age the Best. You're right. The grilled cheese should have just been its own rewatchable scene.
It's a good scene. What's yours?
I think I really just like being at Franklin's Barbecue.
Yeah.
That place made me so happy. We had such a great day there. And I just liked it. Aaron had the same look on his face when we hung out with him that he does in that entire scene. He's just happy. He's so many people have told him like this is the best thing I've ever eaten. Like at some point, it just bounces off him.
He's a good dude,
and he's just a nice guy.
My favorite thing in that scene was he takes that pocket knife out and he cuts a chunk of that biscuit out. Oh, yeah, so good.
Best pure scene though is probably the when he flips out on the critic is just because you're waiting for it. It's building toward
it.
It's
keeps
building.
on going. It's a long scene.
It's great. What's Age the Best? The little kid is awesome.
MJ.
It is so hard to nail the little kid in these movies, and he's in a lot of scenes. He's carrying different weight with Favreau in different scenes. He's got to get upset. He's got to be kind of funny. He's got to be like the third man with Favreau and Leguizamo. I just thought the kid's excellent.
I think the cooking scenes are both like age the best and age the worst.
What's age the worst about them?
Like the technique and the vibe and the tension and everything that's in the kitchen and some of the banter they tried to nail, like, the bacon in the oven, stuff like that. But I know Roy was behind a lot of this stuff. So this is what I'm going to say, Roy. If I was making food in 2013 and they're using my dishes, it still would look old. And I always say the only thing that ages worse than comedy is food.
Yeah.
And food design. And just little things like this swoosh, like one of the dish with the shrimp that he does, you put a dollop down and you sort of make like a Nike logo.
Yeah.
Like nobody does that anymore. Unless you want to look like you're cooking in 2013.
So what's age the best and the worst?
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's the best and the worst.
I got you. I have for what's age the best. This is the most I've ever liked John Leguizamo and Bobby Carnival in a movie.
I didn't like Bobby.
You didn't like Bobby in the movie?
I thought he was weak sauce in it.
But that's the whole point of the character, though.
He's
supposed to be the...
No way. A real weak sauce, like sous chef like that, is like way more hungover, way less like involved.
Interesting.
And he's the person that gets hired and promoted, but everyone talks shit about.
And he's a disaster.
Nobody felt that way about it, It's never like a nice thing, in my opinion, when that guy
Did
gets
you buy that when he went to get drinks with them again?
No way. He would never be there.
You would never see that guy again?
No.
Once he
done.
didn't go with you, that's it.
You're half the time. This guy's fucking dead to me.
Right.
I mean,
just remember, Craig.
In 2023, I'd hopefully have learned to be like, hey, like, but there's a sense of loyalty. It's like, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And part of it is, I think it also a testament to Favreau. Like, I'm not that person in that moment to be like, you should. It's good for you. I think retrospect I would have, but I'd still harbor like, you could have done what Leguizamo did.
Right. Well, Leguizamo is amazing in this movie.
He's very, very good.
He's so good. Ramsey Michelle, the digital palette has aged the best. Just the whole concept and the name, the digital palette's really funny. Like that's actually something somebody might have come up with in the 2010s.
But also like may not seem like believable now, but really believable back then.
Definitely
a blogger
his own...
that became famous and has his own website that he sold for a bunch of money. It's like all real.
Yeah. Critics being haters for a chef has aged the best. I don't feel like we have that anymore. No. Gary Clark Jr. has aged the best. Just he did. It's not like he's in this movie for a second. Like they linger on him as he plays two songs.
You know what I liked about it? There was no mention of his name.
No.
He was just playing in the background, and they weren't like, hey, there's Gary Clark Jr.
Right.
He was just in
Or
it.
like the awkward scene where he comes after, like, hey, Gary, that was great. Like they didn't do any of that. I like when Favreau says, you know what I am? I'm a meme, which felt pretty early on the meme, just to acknowledge that you've become a meme section of the arc of memes.
Can I say how things have changed on social media? Is that all of the things that he was learning in 2013, his kid was teaching him about social media.
Yeah.
Now I think most adults would know how to do all that stuff, right?
No question.
That's a crazy amount of change.
It was a little early for Twitter. The beignets.
That's also, I'd say one of my favorite things is Cafe Du Monde. Have you been there in New Orleans?
Come on.
Of course. Sorry. I didn't know this.
Stop it.
Would you have thought that Bill Simmons would have
What
been
are you talking about?
Okay,
Of
I know you've
course.
been to
How do you go to New Orleans and not go there? It's like the number one thing you have to go
Forgive me,
to.
Bill.
Now, I haven't been to New Orleans since we went back to back in 13 and 14, and we went for work both times, and we had an unbelievable time. But the beignets, it's weird. Nobody else has been able to replicate why they're special in New Orleans. What is it?
I have no idea. Like Cafe
Like
Du
if
Monde.
they were like down the street and they're like, hey, they're making beignets, I would just assume they weren't as good.
Because I think they put more powdered sugar. It's one of the very few. How many places can you think of that are like straight tourist trap attractions? Straight, like that's what it is. But also locals go there, and it's really good.
Right, and it has an iconic something.
Very, very few places, and that is a magical spot for sure.
New Orleans is one of my favorite cities.
Zion Williamson feels the same way about the food.
I can get it because every time I've gone there, I think I've put on like 6 pounds and I feel like I'm sick for a week after. The PR person throwing Hell's Kitchen at Amy Sedaris, throwing that at Favreau is really funny.
That was strangely one of my favorite bits in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Don't you think that she nailed, at least for me, talking to PR people, what I hate about restaurant PR people is exactly, there's nothing she said that wouldn't have happened in real life.
Well, she says that one thing. She goes, he's like, this is going to haunt me forever. And she's like, nah, there's so much news that there's so fast. There's so much white noise that nobody remembers anything. Kind of true.
Yeah. And like, hey, I'm going to deactivate my account. I'm like, no. You can make money off this.
Right. This is a really stealth LA thing. I like that his new restaurant that he's working for that he doesn't really like with Hoffman, that it's in Brentwood. Perfect location.
Do you know the farmer's market where the first scene is? Pasadena Farmer's Market. I think it's the Pasadena Farmer's Market.
I thought that too, because it wasn't the Brentwood Farmer's Market.
It couldn't be Santa Monica. So
no, and it definitely wasn't the one.
And it looks like his home's probably in K-Town area or downtown, his apartment.
Yeah, and Sofia Vergara seems like she lives in either Santa Monica or Hancock Park. The concept of an owner battling with a chef, that's aged the best. That's a time-old tale. Cornstarch on your balls?
Yes.
Can you tell us about this? This is a real thing?
I have that written down as the life lesson. I mean...
So this is a thing in kitchens.
Not only is it a thing, it is just a commonplace acceptance that this happens. So when I first went into a bathroom, I remember I was like one of my first days in a real kitchen, I kept on going back. And it took me like a couple weeks to muster up the courage to ask like one of the sous chefs, like, hey, like, why are all these boxes of cornstarch in the bathroom? And why are they all open? And like, there's cornstarch everywhere. Like Scarface was in here. Like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
And then he's like, you dip your balls in it. I was like, what?
Unbelievable.
I was like, what are you talking about? I understand like people, gold bonds I knew about, right?
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know cornstarch. And literally anybody that's a guy working the line, because it gets so hot, you get swamp ass immediately in like 30 minutes. And you're there for like 5-6 hours standing up.
I wish somebody told me this when I bartended and waited.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you don't need to, because you're in like a temperate climate.
I used to go in the bathroom and get like the big hunk of paper towels and just do it that way.
Cornstarch.
What are you going to do?
Man, like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, happens quite a bit.
Especially if you're behind like any sort of bar situation, that the part, because all the heat coming off the refrigerator.
The cornstarch could have saved your life. It sounds crazy, but it's the real thing.
Cornstarch on my werewolves. That's what Leguizamo says. For What's Age the Best, the soundtrack.
It's huevos, on his huevos.
Oh, I thought he said werewolves.
Well, no, huevos. It's eggs.
His
nuts.
balls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huevos.
Oh, huevos.
Yeah.
I thought werewolves was funnier. Soundtrack, which is Latin jazz, New Orleans jazz and blues. And it moves through as they go to different cities. It's really good. And just in general, like the music has like a cool vibe. Just a fun movie to hang out with. And then we get Gary Clark on top of it.
I was watching, and maybe this is a favorite scene, and maybe I could be totally wrong, when they're at the farmer's market and there's the marionette thing with the skeleton and they're playing Al Green's Tired of Being Alone. Is that like and there's like a weird shot of Favreau and then going to the skeleton that's being puppeted. Is that like a metaphor for him and the movie and like his real life stuff? I don't know, but
I almost put that in rewatchable scene because I did feel like
there's something there.
He was trying to say something that went beyond the movie.
I was like, you watched it, like, because I was like, the only reason I bring that up, I watched it again because that was like a pee break moment to me, and then I watched it and I was like, why the fuck is this scene in here?
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's weird, but he's definitely trying to tell us something. The only other one I had for What's Aged the Best is, how can I back that? You were one of my early boys. When the critic says that to the chef, and that whole concept of the critic having their guys that they feel like they had. I'm sure you felt this.
I have definitely been on that the other end of
people
that.
feel like they own stock in you because they wrote something nice and helped build you up.
And it's no different than, say, anybody that's not a food critic that said to themselves, oh, I can't support this band anymore. They're just like too mainstream. Right.
The Big Kahuna Burger Award for best use of food or drink. This is, I could say hands down, and since we've had this category, this is the toughest we've ever had for this. And I narrowed it down to 3 nominees. Franklin's Barbecue, the grilled cheese, or when he makes hash browns. And I guess we could put in the pasta he makes for Scarlett Johansson as well. I was just trying to think of things that made me the most hungry. The grilled cheese actually made me want to go make a grilled cheese, so I think that wins for me.
I watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff with Roy, and I've never seen anybody like DJ the bread before.
Yeah.
Might have to try that technique out. But we talked about this. You like all that cheese. I'm a less cheese is better on a grilled cheese. You want more.
The word in the street is your grilled cheeses just aren't that good.
All right,
that's
man.
What Hugo told me. That's what I heard.
This is how he got me to make French fries.
I heard you never really you never really cracked the code on grilled cheeses.
This is what we got to do. I got to have a cooking throwdown with your mom. Now I got to do a grilled cheese
on
challenge.
Meatballs. Like, I don't want that to happen to you. You figured out French fries. At least inspired that. The Den of Thieves Benihana Award for scene stealing location. I just love being in South Beach. You could also say French Quarter too, but they capture like what South Beach is like on a really nice day, which is weird people walking around. It's nice and the women are pretty, and I don't know. I like being there.
South Beach is fun for 48 hours.
Exactly. Maybe even 36. But when you get there, it's like, whoa, this is great. Oh my God.
You feel like you're in like the south of France or something like that.
Day 4, you're ready. Yeah. It's like Vegas. You're like, I got to get out of here. I don't know what to have for Great Shot Gordo Award for most cinematic shot. So I just went with the shot of all the meat at Franco Barbecue.
I'll go with the same.
Yeah. It wasn't the most artistic shot, but was amazing. The Vincent Chase Award for, are we sure this character was actually good at his job? I'm adding this to the list. I didn't send this to you. Are we sure any of the people were as good at their job as the movie made it seem? Like, for instance, Carl? Like, he's making some Cubanos? Like, how great could those Cubanos have been compared to the typical person's Cubanos?
Not that I didn't look at all the ingredients and I was like, could it be that good? But I'm also putting context of its day. Maybe it wasn't. It's also new. So I don't know.
Ahead of its time, but probably replicable, right?
Yes. But it's also maybe the sides and everything else. Even my own restaurant, people said, hey, our noodles suck, but everything else is delicious. Right. For me, it was, again, like Bobby Cannavale. Again, like the food that when he was in charge, because Casper quit.
Yeah.
And the food that he was putting out was straight garbage.
You could just tell from
I'm just like, you can't. I mean, to me, I was like, that guy's a hack ass motherfucker. He should never work here.
Okay. What's aged the worst? We mentioned the importance of food critics. I didn't think the on-screen Twitter graphics totally worked. It was kind of the primitive era of Twitter graphics. They were hard to read.
I liked it because it was so like.
Could you read them though? I had trouble reading them.
It wasn't
Maybe
about
it was smaller TVs.
But I liked that bit because it was like it put everything in the context.
Yeah, I just couldn't see it. I have for What's Aged the Worst, quote, "My kid and I saw you on Tosh.0. You were hilarious."
Did Tosh.0 exist? Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah. Tosh.0 was of 2010s.
Really? I thought they just made that up.
No, huge. Daniel Tosh, the comedian.
Really?
Yeah.
I was trying to get him to come on my podcast for like a year. He wouldn't do any press, but he liked me. What else do you have for which is the worst?
The food to me is again, some of it, the food that the critic ate
Just
that we
say
saw.
it. Stop being
I thought
a
it was
fucking wuss.
If that was the food that made Carl Casper famous,
Yeah,
it's like, what was that about, man?
like beef cheeks and
beef cheeks. No, but even before that, like the hits. If those were his hits, like, what the fuck?
so you thought he needed some sort of
No, these were the hits. Eggs, caviar with fingerling potato chips.
yeah.
That's like a classic arpege dish.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about just chefs and iconic dishes, right? So it's based on a lot of these esoteric dishes. Then it was just like scallops. And then it was French onion soup.
Yeah. That made me hungry though. I
And
love
then
French onion soup.
then it looked like a veal chop on potatoes, mashed potatoes, and like 2 cherry tomatoes on top. And then the warm chocolate cake. I'm like, I understand why that had to happen because you're trying to tell a narrative. But when I take that out of context, if I'm just judging it on that, and then I put into consideration that it was Bobby Cannavale at the pass making that food go out, like, not.
So what would you have added if they made you conciliary?
No, I'm just saying, like,
but what dish should he have had? An extra dish? Like,
no, that I'm not. I have no idea. But like, if those were the hits for Carl Casper, those dishes that I just
and
talked
he's not
about,
doing that well.
then what the hell?
Yeah, why am I going
Maybe
to Brentwood?
maybe Miami wasn't that hot.
Right.
I don't know. Does
Maybe
that make
it's a
sense?
Big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Ron Burgundy flew to word. Best time for a pee break. I have right after the Downy Seed when they're fixing the food truck. I think you can jump out of there for 3 minutes.
I like that.
Pee went out. I said,
For me, it was the cop.
okay. Was there a better title for this movie?
I said burnt.
Well, there's a whole story. It was Chef versus Burnt. There was a cease and desist at one point. Sony cleared the title Chef and the Chef. And the other Burnt movie, which was written by Stephen Knight, had to change their name to Burnt. Came out a year later with Bradley Cooper, a movie that you do not like as much as Chef. I like both movies because I like food movies, but I like Chef way more than Burnt.
I mean, here's the thing. This is why the food in Burnt is so goddamn stupid. I can't even comprehend it. Everything that happened in Chef as a food, like, is great in 2013, 2014, and how they cook is all extremely realistic. Credit to Roy. Everything that happens in Burnt is based on a bullshit true story. Like, none of that would ever happen. Right? It's just none of it. It makes me mad just thinking about how stupid the dishes
are. So you're not available for the Burnt rewatchables.
I would love to do a Burnt rewatchables.
All right. Best quote. What do you have for best quote?
I wrote it down. Where are we?
I had I'm good at this. I get to touch people's lives with what I do. I think is the enduring quote of this movie.
I have it. I have the best quote. Carl Casper's weight gain can only be explained to the fact that he must be eating all the foods that back to his kitchen.
It's a good one. All right, it's time for the Stephen A. Smith Hottest Take Award. Did you bring a hottest take, or do you just want me to do mine?
Do yours first. Go first.
Chef 2, it's time. Chef 2. Now we got to see the food world in 2023-24 through Carl, who has clearly been canceled by Scarlett Johansson's character or some sort of something. And now he's on the road back again. And he's divorced and his kid's grown up and doesn't want to be his sous chef. And I just want to get back with the crew as he puts his life back together again. Chef 2. I'm greenlighting it right now.
Can I give you my hot take on that?
Yeah.
Is that happens 48 hours after the wedding.
Right after they open
Sofia
the restaurant.
Vergara, I was like, what?
Scarlett Johansson?
I'm back. Didn't they get remarried at the end? Like,
Yeah.
why would I get remarried this guy again? And then Scarlett Johansson is like the love interest. Like, I just thought she was great in it. Why she was the hostess or sommelier, I don't know. But
we have her. We're going to deep dive her during Dion Waiters Award. So you think Chef 2 should have just been 48 hours later, they immediately get divorced?
I was joking that I thought the next day it all falls apart.
Okay.
That's like a real chef life.
Yeah. It went well for one day.
Yeah.
Then El Jefe had like some sort of some dysentery scare.
Exactly.
It's a bathroom. Somebody sued because they choked on an oyster, and it just goes to
Everything
hell.
good that happens in the restaurant world turns bad. Like, so, yeah.
I couldn't find any casting what ifs. A rare movie where there was none. The Ruffalo Hannah Rubeneck Partridge Overacting Award. Couldn't really find anything for this either. I do feel like there was a couple times when Favreau was trying to seem like he was getting emotional, where he kind of dialed it up and made the Jon Favreau, I'm getting emotional face.
In the critic scene.
Well, no, like when he's doing watching the 1 second a day videos.
Oh, that's right.
When he's talking to his son, he kind of does, when he drops his son off and he makes the Jon Favreau sad face.
Can I say that was actually, now that I think about it, probably my fast forward moment.
Dropping off the son?
No, the 1 second video, one of your favorite bits.
Oh.
Because I just watched the movie. I don't need to see the 1 second clips of that again.
Fair. I liked it. I'm corny, though. Best That Guy award, probably Russell Peters, the guy who played the police officer he didn't like.
That's Russell Peters?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
it's a good That Guy.
Is that the Dion Waiters Award?
No, Dion Waiters Award is right here. And this is... Craig, you tell me if this is about as loaded as we've ever gotten for Dion Waiters. Our nominees, Scarlett Johansson, Dustin Hoffman, Robert Downey Jr., Oliver Platt, Gary Clark Jr., and Aaron Franklin, the barbecue guy.
I think you're missing Amy Sedaris.
Amy Sedaris. Let's throw her in too.
I think, for me, she's my Dion Waiters Heat Check Award.
Really?
Yeah. Because it was the most believable conversation outside of Riva. Like Riva, that shit happens all the time. And I think that PR conversation happens all the time. It was extremely believable and,
Fair case. The winner is Robert Downey Jr. Well, it's my winner. You can have your winner. We can disagree.
I think that's what most people would agree.
I don't even know who the character was. We know nothing about him. And he just starts hitting 30-footers. Draymond's doing handoff plays with him. He's coming around picks, just firing it up over his head. Could he get 5 threes in 5 minutes?
Could anyone else you know of played that role?
Literally nobody. Not one actor. I thought about this, actually. I was trying to think like...
DiCaprio?
No, not like that. Clooney would have tried. It wouldn't have gone as well. Nobody. Not one person. Maybe Denzel if he had more of a sense of humor, but I don't even think him. I don't think the person exists. This is like the perfect Robert Downey.
And Favreau would know.
Favreau would know because he's hung out with him, and I like that he dipped into the friendship. Also, Downey doesn't do shit like this. Just period. It's like the only thing he's done like this. Recasting couch. I love the casting in this movie, but I would add a Dave Chang cameo.
They had Lucky Peach in there, so I'm okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. Would there have been a way to go to Washington first and then gone down, and you happen to be there that day complaining about Daniel Snyder and
Chef 2, David Chang is Daniel Snyder's personal chef.
trying to get him to sell the team. I don't know. I like the casting. Did you have anything you would change?
I saw on the sheet like Danny Trejo. Here's what I would have done. And I love Bobby Cannavale as an actor, but I don't think he played that role well. It wasn't believable being hungover. That's not a hungover chef that's been out all night.
Should we go on Trejo?
I think you move Leguizamo to the...
we can't touch Leguizamo. He's such a good sidekick, though.
But Danny Trejo as a cook is like a real thing.
Okay.
That is like a more believable Martin character that's still extremely loyal, but maybe not as loquacious.
Half-assed research. Leguizamo spent time as an actual line cook at the Lion in West Village.
Yeah, I actually think that he might have spent a night staging at Noodle Bar.
Really?
I swear to God, I was trying to think about this. I was trying to find emails. And he staged around at a bunch of restaurants. I swear I think he stopped by Noodle Bar.
Filming locations in Miami included the Versailles restaurant.
There's a classic
Blue Hotel.
Restaurant. Yep.
Hoy Como Ayer in Little Havana. I probably said that wrong. Hoy Como Ayer? I don't even know.
I don't know how it is.
In New Orleans, there at Cafe du Monde. Austin, Franco Barbecue, and Guero's on South Congress. They improvised a lot of the food trunk scenes with the three to capture what it's like in a kitchen. You mentioned the chef show with Favreau and Roy Choi.
That I've been on.
Netflix, 2019. Did a second season, 2020. El Jefe at the end, when they're at that nighttime food truck event, that's based on an actual event in Venice called First Fridays, and you can briefly see Roy Choi's truck.
Yeah,
the
Kogi was in the background.
initial truck. And then Favreau said in the director commentary for some of the road scenes, they used stock footage and put the truck in digitally, which that was pretty convincing. Apex Mountain. Chefs? Did it ever get better for chefs than 2014?
It is definitely peak chef time.
Peak chef, Apex Mountain. Favreau, no. I actually think it's probably after Iron Man comes out. I think we did that. Although Van, I think, made the case for Amanda. What did Van say for Favreau in Apex Mountain?
Iron Man, I think.
I think it was Iron Man. I think we agree on that.
You guys don't think it's the Mandalorian? Or as an actor or director?
Because he
He
out
thought it
Iron
was
Man.
Mando, and then you explained why Iron Man he had more juice.
Yeah. Twitter.
It's peak Twitter.
Right? 2 years later,
it's
Trump ruins Twitter, and then Twitter turns into this just...
Or do you consider that peak Twitter?
I think 2014, there was still something fun about Twitter. It was still promotional, but it wasn't what it became.
I mean, everything in 2014 seemed possible in a good way.
Right. It's true.
Wow.
It's one of the last nice eras we've had.
It was an apex life.
Yeah, maybe it was. Food critics, definitely. Unless you would say like 2 years earlier.
I'm also going to say hot take. Apex Cubano sandwich.
I had Cubanos next.
I love a Cubano.
When have Cubanos ever been used better?
Do
Do you want to do Cubanos now? Because I had this in unanswerable questions.
Okay, let's go.
Want to do it now?
Let's go.
Why aren't they more in my life? I can't remember ever being like, hey man, there's this place that has these great Cubanos. Do you want to go? And me saying like, no, that sounds terrible. Or, hey, I made you a Cubano. Do you want a bite? Like, I'd love a bite. It's just for some reason they kind of fell by the sandwich wayside in a way that I don't totally understand. And they don't seem that hard to make.
They're delicious, number one.
Yeah.
And it's one of the very few sandwiches I like mustard on. I'm not a mustard guy. You have to have a steady thing of pickles in there. It's got everything. The fat. If I have to be critical, I think the ham is unnecessary. There's usually a slice of ham.
So you do grilled cheese with no meat?
No, there's ham and there's like deli ham and there's like roast pork leg in there.
Oh, in the Cubano they made in this.
And I think they put the ham in there too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But you don't see Cubanos maybe because there's not.
I can't remember the last time I've had one. I don't even really remember what's in it.
In New York, I would get them a bunch.
So you're making a Cubano for me. What are you putting in it? Pork, no ham.
No,
Long French bread, soft.
Here's the thing. If I'm going to make it for you, I'm going to try to make it as like the real version.
Yeah.
And then I would probably put some other salted pork in there. But you really need that for the salt because it's a lot of meat that may not be seasoned. So that's why I think the ham slice has a actual legitimate reason to be in there, but I probably would put something else in there.
So when they go to Franco Barbecue and they make it with the Franco
that's
Barbecue
the one
meat,
I want to eat.
That looked like the single most delicious sandwich you could ever eat in your life.
That would be sick.
We got Philippe's French dip last week, actually. Postmated it, but put the sauce on the side and then toasted the French dip a little bit more, and then it was fucking great. It was fucking great. The
Cubano is really great because it's a walking and eating sandwich.
Right.
It's a great walking eating sandwich.
Not super drippy if it's made correctly.
No.
Yeah, it seems like pretty replicable.
Underrated. Apex Cubano, also criminally underrated.
Still.
Yeah. I don't even know where you can you even
it's
get
like the
one?
Robert Horry of sandwiches. Sofia Vergara, I'm going to say probably it's a couple years earlier when she's on Modern Family, just getting nominated for Emmys year after year, but it's right around her apex. Probably maybe a year before. The TV show Hell's Kitchen, I think Apex Mountain.
I think it's still
My son still watches it on YouTube.
One of the biggest shows.
My son loves it. He's like,
huge.
You know, I never told you this because I thought you'd get mad, but my son said to me, Dad, why doesn't Chang make a show like Hell's Kitchen where he just yells at everybody? And I was like, because he would never do that.
We'll see.
He loves watching Gordon Ramsay just yell at people.
Ramsay is like Eminem at yelling at people. He really is.
Yeah, it's tough to match. Apex Mountain for South Beach. I'm going to make the case right now.
No way.
LeBron's still there. The Heat have won. They're in the finals 4 straight years.
Yeah, maybe for that.
Miami's a thing.
Miami.
all the hotels have really rounded into shape in a real way.
Mm-mm.
The word is out that Miami is actually like the cool place to go and have fun for 5 days, and it's a little under the radar. You're not getting captured by paparazzi. All the celebrities are going down there. At that point with South Beach, it was known that NBA teams like don't bet on them the day in an afternoon game after they've been in South Beach. I feel like the legend of South Beach was really going at this point.
Maybe for sports and nightlife, but for food, it's this year. It's since the pandemic. Everyone's moved
23.
out. 21, 22, because there was no rules.
Yeah.
You could do whatever you want. So many people moved down there to operate, and it's become like one of, if not the best food cities in America.
Really?
It's crazy. Yeah, for sure. It's apex.
Well, you've talked about this on your pod, so
Yeah.
I shouldn't sound this surprised.
Yeah.
But what's the number one restaurant there now, in your opinion? Or what's
I don't know
like
if
the
it's number one,
food
but
thing?
everyone's going to Carbone and all their iterations of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beignets?
I think underrated, not apex. People don't
I
know.
was trying to think maybe in a movie. Probably in a movie.
I've never seen it in another movie.
Yeah, they did a good job. And then Roy Choi. It's peak powers at this point. Right around when he won the award. He's got the truck. He's helping Favreau make a movie.
I think it's still. I think the chef more. I don't know how many people watch the Netflix show.
Okay, fair.
That's like, to me, that's when people watch Netflix, shit like really pops.
Any other Apex Mountain for you?
No.
Okay. Best racehorse name from this movie. El Jefe is obviously the winner.
I put Ramsey Michelle.
Ramsey Michelle's good. I also like Cubano. It's like, here comes Cubano. Picking nits. Why is Inez so wealthy? What's her deal?
Is it because it's
She married Robert Downey Jr.'s
and
character?
and I think Favreau's character implies that she's an actress that.
This is a good pick and nit because there's a backstory with her that I don't totally understand. It's just like they were married and she was rich, and that's it. They leave it alone. Probably could have been explained in 20 seconds by somebody. Just show her on it. One of your old shows is running, and it's like her on like.
I just need to know what happened. How did that?
How did he pull that off?
Yeah.
Well, we know he was a lot skinnier when he lived because the critic says that. So
I mean, still. A skinny, we know what a skinny Favreau looks like.
Friends Favreau.
Right? We know what the skinny Favreau looks like. Is that good enough to land her?
She loved food.
That's what I'm trying to say. So I want to know what were the dishes.
People say this about Grace. They're like, how did he get Grace?
This is true. This is true.
No, I think he probably was like a big celebrity in Miami, right?
I don't know. That's why we need a prequel.
I'm with you that it does seem a little far-fetched that in like the 2002 range, somebody would have emerged as a celebrity chef in Miami.
John, don't get pissed at me. I'm just telling you, I understand why, but it just is like, I get it. I get why it happened.
Another picking nit for me. Would Twitter really drive that many people in New Orleans to a Cubano truck in 2014?
It was how people found food.
Even in the French Quarter when there's a million things to do?
Nationally.
Okay. What other picking nits do you have?
I think that's it.
Yeah, because we covered the rest of them. We did the next category is better with Wayne Jenkins, Danny Trejo, Catherine Hahn, Steve Buscemi, Sam Jackson, J.T. Walsh, or Philip Baker Hall. We don't have CR coming into Wayne Jenkins. You already said the answer is Trejo. I had him written down too.
I will say too, Catherine Hahn is probably the more believable sommelier than Scarlett Johansson. To me.
Fair. They did try to make Scarlett like seem like that the restaurant maitre d' who's definitely like left home when she was 17 and
I mean, again, friend, all the Marvel movies, but I just think when I talk to people about chef, they're always, at least in the culinary community, you know what they always say is like, how did that guy land Scarlett Johansson?
He's juggling the ladies. Just one Oscar, who gets it?
This is maybe controversial, but I'm giving it to the Oscar winner he's won like a handful. What? Dustin Hoffman?
Hoffman for Best Supporting Actor.
It was very, very, very brief, but very believable.
I put Leguizamo. I love him in this movie. Best Supporting Actor. He's just
I love him.
So additive. He doesn't have a bad like second in this movie.
All his lines are great. I just don't think
I love when he shows up. I love when he gets the guys to come over to help them move the stuff because he promised them sandwiches. Great stuff. Best double feature choice with this movie. I like the idea of Swingers and then Chef. I also like the idea of just doing Chef Burnt combo, just banging out mid-2010s food movies.
What was Favreau's movie he did with Vince Vaughn where they're
Made.
boxing? I like that one too.
Okay. So what's your pick?
But I'm not going to go there. I think if you're going to do food, I'm going to say Eat,
Big
Drink,
Night?
Man, Woman.
Yep.
Not Big Night, and Ratatouille.
Oh,
I think Ratatouille is still like
I've heard this
the
take.
best, one of the best culinary movies of all, like for fine dining. Yeah, it covers so many things.
Probably unanswerable questions. Is it possible for the Cubano to have this much power and potency?
So again, to get granular here, it's possible if they were like making their own flour with their own
There's some
special pigs.
sauce in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything's like custom designed,
Yeah.
but they're just buying from wherever or the farmer's market. So listen, it's a movie. I'm going to give it its belief that yes, it can happen. But in real life, I don't think so.
You have any other unanswerables?
Um,
We hit everything else. We kind of jumped ahead a couple times.
yeah, we did jump ahead, but that would be it. Is I still want to know his career. To me, that's the most fascinating thing as a chef. How did he wind up in Miami? How did he wind up in LA?
The prequel.
The
So you want prequel?
I want the prequel. I think
Okay.
that would give everything a nice sort of tie all my questions I have together.
Andy and Red Zwane Award for what happened the next day is,
Divorce.
well, here's my other question. In 2023, is El Jefe still open?
That's a good question.
Did it change hands?
Well, I think this is what happened.
Good
and
idea
I
for a
wrote it down.
restaurant. I would go to El Jefe tonight.
I think that for sure, those culinary partnerships rarely ever work out.
Yeah.
They always end up in divorce.
Especially with a food critic. And
Yeah. For sure, they're not together anymore.
No.
Probably the son doesn't like Jon Favreau too much.
The son found girls and he was out. He's like, Dad, I can't help you prep the...
And do you think that he's still married to Sofia Vergara?
Probably not.
Do you think maybe he found a relationship with Scarlett Johansson?
Probably not. Probably a third one. Probably, I don't know, some customer that came in or something. What piece of memorabilia would you want from this movie?
I actually have it. I don't have it on me because I was trying to find it for this, but it's in storage somewhere. Is Favreau. So this is a good story. Before the movie came out, he wanted my notes on it. So I went to his house and I saw it in his like home theater, and he gave me a gold coin that said chef on it. So only the people in production got this gold coin. I
Wow,
got the
that's
gold
a
coin.
good...
Yeah.
Craig, if we had somebody in the category actually had memorabilia, I think we made
like
history
legitimately, they're gold coins, probably not real gold, but
Yeah.
who knows? And it's a chef with the whole logo and everything on it.
I have the food truck. That'd be just a cool thing to have. The
The
food
whole
truck
thing?
from Chef. Yeah, it's just like in your backyard. What's that? It's the food truck. It says Cubanos on it. Coach Finstock Award, best life lesson.
It's cornstarch.
You had cornstarch. I think do what you love is a good lesson from this movie, and one of the reasons I like it. It's all about the battle between doing something that's good, that puts you professionally in the right spot, or following whatever your heart is and going that way and hoping it's going to work out.
I mean, I think
that resonates with me.
I think the life lesson too is taking the chance on yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've all, particularly you, have had experience working for companies that feel like they're limiting what you're allowed to do. And, you know, I think the food
You
truck
talk
was a
about
good
today?
So it's like, I think it's a perfect expression, right? It's like a food truck is literally
It's the bet on yourself ultimate thing you can do as a chef.
It's total freedom.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of my peers did it. And they were like, wow, this is super hard.
Right.
This fucking food truck life is so hard.
Who won the movie? It's got to be Favreau.
Favreau.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
No question.
Roy Choi also wins.
I think a lot of people win in this movie. And Cubanos.
It's a happy
Franco
movie.
Barbecue wins.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it
there's
really just
no
is
one
pleasant.
Even the ending, as sort of
A little corny.
it ends. Everything is happy,
Yeah.
which is what you want in a rewatchable.